Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Focal Points. Today, our special guest is Dr. Kevin Stillwagon. He's a retired chiropractor and airline captain, freedom fighter, free thinker, inventor, author, speaker, and do it yourselfer. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the podcast, Kevin. And I want you to tell us there's been some concerning developments regarding new delivery platforms for genetic technologies. What have you uncovered?
Yeah. First, Nick, thanks for having me on. And I really appreciate everything that you and Peter McCullough are doing in terms of keeping people grounded in the real science and not panicking over these ridiculous situations that we're finding ourselves in right now. So, yeah, the whole idea behind this platform technology that they're using right now is to deliver a message into our cells to make a protein so that the end result of that will be an antibody that's created against that protein. Now, this whole thing really doesn't make much sense because when you really boil it down, the antibody that's going to be created is what's called a serum antibody. It's inside of the body. It cannot protect you from becoming infected. You will get infected. All the antibody does is react to the infection when it does happen. And the narrative that they're trying to push now is that, well, it won't prevent the infection, but it will prevent severe symptoms. Well, that might work if they were injecting the entire organism, but they're not. They're only injecting a protein that's just a little part of the organism, and that protein generally will mutate over time. So basically what happens is you've focused your immune system to look for the wrong thing. You're looking for what was just injected into you, not what's actually circulating through the population. So what happens is the antibodies become what is called suboptimal. They do not attach to the invading organism in a strong fashion. They attach very weakly, and this can signal your immune system to actually make more of the virus, make it easier to spread. And it can also, because you're creating so many of these proteins and so many of these antibodies, which they're very proud of doing, it can actually trigger what's called the complement cascade, which is a very, very aggressive arm of the immune system. And this can start doing severe tissue damage. And that's why we're finding people getting all kinds of neurological problems and vascular problems after they've been injected for something that's supposed to be a respiratory illness. So yeah, we've got some significant problems here. Now, both Pfizer and Moderna, who are using these lipid nanoparticle technologies, have admitted that their technology is toxic. And the reason is because they're using a larger fat bubble, which is not generally toxic because it's made of normal body fats. One of them is cholesterol, and the other is a long and fancy name that's fun to say, disterylphosphatidylcholine, abbreviated DSPC, but these are normal body fats. Now, they also use polyethylene glycol, and they do that to control the size of the fat bubble, which is very curiously about the same size as the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So let that sink into your head for a little bit. But anyway, inside of the bigger fat bubble, there are smaller fat bubbles, and they're self-assembling. And the word self-assembly kind of scared people because they thought, well, this is going to self-assemble into all kinds of crazy things, little robots and microcircuits. No, that's not what's going on here. These are cationic lipids. They're positively charged, and they will automatically surround and encapsulate the messenger RNA, which is negatively charged. And so the cationic lipids that they used are different. Moderna used SM102, Pfizer used ALC0315. Both of these lipids are very toxic. Anybody can look it up. And when you find the spreadsheets or the informational sheets on these products, you'll see that they are for experimental use only. They're not supposed to be used in veterinary medicine, nor diagnostics, nor treatment procedures. And so why they found their way into these shots, I mean, we really need to dig down deep and find out why that was. So anyway, the problem is by using the cholesterol, these things tend to, form larger deposits in tissues like the liver because they're made of cholesterol. So, and again, they become toxic. So what happens is these smaller lipid nanoparticles that are inside of the bigger ones, they're encapsulated in endosomes inside of your cellular cytoplasm. And the pH has to be just right for those things to break open and let the mRNA escape into your cytoplasm. And now there's the message to make the protein, and the protein starts getting made. So they've admitted that there's a toxic problem there. So the way this company, Entos, has decided to deal with that is to, number one, eliminate the cholesterol so that there will be a more uniform biodistribution. It won't tend to congregate in the liver or the lymph nodes. It will literally go everywhere, all over the body. And they're very, very proud of that. So they got rid of the cholesterol. And in order to get it to bind to cells and distribute the cargo that they put inside of it, they use these little proteins that are called fusion-associated small transmembrane proteins, and they abbreviate that FAST. And the reason they use these proteins is because they will bind to basically any cell in your body. It doesn't require a receptor to bind. So it goes everywhere. It will merge with virtually any cell that it bumps up against, and it will dump the cargo that's inside of this vehicle. They call it a proteolipid vehicle, which acts exactly like a virus does. A virus is a shell that's made of proteins and fats. That's exactly what this proteolipid vehicle is. And so inside of that vehicle, they put their cargo, which is either messenger RNA, or it could even be plasmid DNA. And this gets delivered directly into the cell without the secondary toxic lipid nanoparticle being involved. So that eliminates some of the toxicity. So here they are getting your body cells to make proteins all over your body. Now, the problem with that is you've got basic immune protections against this happening. And the first one basically are toll-like receptors. Toll-like receptors are supposed to be able to identify viral nucleic acid sequences in your cytoplasm, and they will actually stop viral replication and stop these dangerous proteins from being made without even damaging the cell. It just stops the process dead in its tracks. Well, they knew that this was a problem, Moderna and Pfizer did years ago, and that's why Carrico and Wiseman got a Nobel Prize for putting a synthetic uridine in there. It's an N1-methylpseudouridine that evades the detection of the toll-like receptors. So your body will start making these foreign proteins. Well, as these foreign proteins are being made, you have another layer of protection. It's called cytotoxic T cells. As these proteins are being made by your cells, they're going to show parts of those proteins on little what are called MHC sites on their surfaces. And your cytotoxic T cells are constantly looking at those MHC sites, type 1 sites, to see what's actually going on inside of the cells, because our cells are making proteins all day long. That's what they do. So our surveillance system is checking to see if something foreign is being made. And that's what these injectable products are doing. They're making foreign proteins. So when your cytotoxic T cells see that happening, they send an apoptotic signal to those cells, and the cells will literally kill themselves. So if this is happening over large areas of your tissues, for example, the endothelium, which lines your blood vessels, even the lining of the heart, if it's happening in larger areas, then you start to have tissue destruction. And this can lead to vascular problems like microhemorrhaging, microclotting. If it gets bad enough, you can start to have strokes and heart attacks and even myocarditis. And Nic, this is what people don't really understand. This is happening before the protein even gets made. But the problem is we're injecting so much of this stuff that your cytotoxic T cells are not able to keep up with it. So what happens is these foreign proteins do get made and they do get secreted into the bloodstream. And then they start to circulate through your body. Well, that's what they want to happen because they want your body to build an antibody against that protein. That's the goal here. But it takes about 2 weeks for your body to build an appropriate antibody response against those proteins. And that's why, Nic, when this whole vaccine thing started, and you'll remember this, they said you're not fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after your second shot. And the reason they said that is because they were thinking that you didn't have any protection unless you had that antibody response, which takes 2 weeks. But that's not where the protection is. The protection is cellular. It involves those cytotoxic T cells, and it also involves other things in your mucosal layer. It does not involve these serum antibodies that they're trying to generate.
It's fundamentally flawed.
It is
fundamentally flawed, and these PLVs, particularly compared to what they've been using, the LNPs, they're just the lipid nanoparticles with cholesterol. So these PLVs, if we look at this graph here, so it looks like they go everywhere, even more so than the LNPs did. There's an even higher biodistribution, although less toxicity. You're going to have this antigen production everywhere at higher levels. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And they're very proud of that. But the part that they're ignoring is the cytotoxic T cell destruction that's going to occur, number one, and the fact that it takes about 2 weeks for antibodies to be made against those proteins. You got to think about what happens to those proteins in the meantime. Well, they're going to attach to cellular receptors. And now that activates a whole nother arm of your immune system that involves macrophages and neutrophils that are going to attack and destroy those cells that have the proteins attached. So there are levels of tissue destruction that are going to occur here that can be very, very damaging. Now, not everybody is going to make the same amount of proteins. And, that's a problem too. Number one, when you get injected with this stuff, you don't know where it's going to go. Basically, it will go everywhere, but you don't know which cells are going to uptake and start making these proteins, nor do you know how many proteins are going to be made. And as we know, they put that N1-methylpseudouridine in there to make these things last longer. And then they want you to get a booster shot on top of that to make even more proteins. And again, what's the goal? The goal is to make that antibody, which they say is going to protect you. There's no protection there. There might be protection against severe disease, but only if they are injecting the entire organism. Again, they're not. They're only making a little part of it, and that little part is going to mutate. So now you've got your immune system focused on the wrong thing. So we need to get back to common sense, Nic. Basically, preventing these infections from happening in the first place, and then treating the symptoms when they do happen. And I'm very thankful that people like you and Peter McCullough are cluing people in on how to prevent these infections and how to treat them once they do occur.
So yeah, absolute disaster, absolute experiment on humanity with these products have caused immense harm. And as you just described, the mechanisms of how that happens and how they don't even work. And so what is Entos Pharmaceuticals doing now with these PLVs? We go on their website, and you found that the Gates Foundation sponsors these guys, and they're planning on rolling these out for the next iterations of these mRNA injections. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, Nic. They are already involved in clinical trials right now for a COVID-19 shot. And it's not using messenger RNA as the cargo inside of these proteolipid vehicles. They're actually putting plasmid DNA in there. And you and I both know the dangers of doing that, because there could be contamination that could very easily get integrated into the genome. Because the way these plasmid DNAs work is once they get into the cytoplasm, they have to go into the nucleus of the cell. And then there are enzymes in the nucleus that will transcribe the DNA into messenger RNA. And during this process, you can have integration into our genome. And if that happens, it'll be in that cell line for the rest of that person's life. And that's why we're starting to see these turbo cancers showing up in people, because it is disrupting their genomes. This is not a good thing. So they're already in clinical trials right now. They're happening up in Canada. They're not happening in the United States right now. They've got 50 people involved in phase 1, which is not using a placebo. All they're doing is injecting half of the people with a low dose and the other half with a higher dose to see if there's any severe adverse reactions. And then once they get through phase 1, then they go to phase 2. And phase 2 is going to be another small group of about 250 people. And what they're looking for here, Nick, is the immune response. They want to see how robust the production of antibodies is going to be. They're not concerned about does it prevent disease symptoms at all. They're only concerned about creating those antibodies where they think there's protection, and there's just not. It's not there.
It's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. You're going to implement these dangerous PLV platforms. It's going to go everywhere in their body. They're going to be delivering these plasmid DNA. I mean, it's just terrible. Like, why was this even allowed to begin in Canada?
I don't know, Nick. And the lipids that they're using in these proteolipid vehicles are toxic also. They just are. I looked them up. They have long, very complicated names. They're all synthetically designed lipids. And one of them is DOTAP. Another one is DODAP, that's DODAP, which is for research use only, not for human veterinary diagnosis or therapy. Clearly on the product sheet, it shows that. The next one is DOPE, or DOPE, and this stuff is toxic if inhaled, is cancer causing, and has been associated with fetal damage. I mean, what are these people thinking?
They get away with it in the past. They did it 4 years ago. Nothing happened to them. Nobody gets in trouble. They're still on the market. And so then now they think they can get away with just continuously advancing this technology. Or I should say advancing, becoming more destructive to humans, maybe more effective for some people that want to hurt people, but not more effective in preventing disease, or especially infections.
No, especially communicable diseases. It's not going to do that, because as we have already discussed, it only creates a serum antibody, which cannot prevent you from becoming infected. In fact, it makes the infection easier to happen. And we saw that with the COVID shot. So we're going down the same road with these things. The Entos Pharmaceutical Company has partnered with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They're in a partnership right now to use this technology to create antibodies against HIV and also malaria.
We have our furthest along clinical program is actually a COVID-19 DNA vaccine that we just finished phase 2. We're going back to clinic as a booster in a couple months. We just announced last week a great relationship with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, working on intramuscularly injected therapeutics that will produce neutralizing antibodies for HIV and malaria. Really excited about that relationship and the application of that approach to many other diseases as well.
But again, these things are not going to be able to prevent infections. They're only going to be able to react to them once they do. And unfortunately, the way our immune system works, the reaction can be quite violent and actually harm the person instead of help the person. So
Well, yeah,
again,
if you see here, yeah, you can see everyone for themselves. You can see Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They're one of the main partners on this, and whoever
mhm,
confidential is, they're not saying who else is involved, but clearly, anything that the Gates Foundation is involved in, usually turns out to be a disaster for health.
absolutely it does. Absolutely.
Definitely, most definitely. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I mean, this information is really important. Nobody's talking about these PLVs that are on the pipeline and really how dangerous they can be. And so, again,
Exactly.
thank you for sharing these insights. And do you want to tell us anything else in a closing message or anything else you think is important that you want to let our audience know?
Yeah, well, I think in order to make America healthy again, there has to be an educational process, Nick, where people understand basic concepts in immunology. And a very basic concept is understanding that just because you come in contact with a pathogenic organism doesn't mean that you're going to be infected. And we see this now with the ridiculous testing that they're doing on chickens and cows. They're looking for the antigen or the virus in the mucosa. That's outside of the body. It doesn't mean that cow or chicken is infected or even will be. So they use this to put people in panic, and then they start killing the entire herd. And, our food prices go up, and it's just unnecessary. All of this is unnecessary. What we need to get back to is common sense and not be afraid of coming in contact with pathogenic organisms. It happens all the time. You can't stop it from happening any more than you can stop ocean tides. And this is even if you're wearing a mask, because it's going to get around that. So, I mean, look, people, let's not panic. Let's get back to basic prevention. The McCullough protocol and Nick both have suggested, ways that you can do this with nasal lavages and gargling and mouthwash and other things of that nature. And then if a person does become infected, these things can be treated and managed quite easily. It's only the people that have severe immunosuppression that are going to have problems with these things. And those are the people that can't be injected with products anyway because their immune systems can't handle it. So yeah, let's just get back to common sense. Let's drop the fear factor. Let's not be afraid of each other and not be afraid of these organisms either. And I think we'll be on a faster road to making America healthy again.
Yes, great words, wise words. And yes, do not line up for these next upcoming self amplifying PLV delivery system genetic injections. Do not do it. They're going to be dangerous. And
They
again,
are
thank
going to, yeah, they are very, very dangerous. And, I'm all for freedom of choice, but, the products got to be safe. These products clearly are not safe. They need to be pulled off the market.
indeed, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. It was nice having you on the show.
My pleasure, Nick. I appreciate it.